All right, good evening. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Village of Vernon Hills. We need to start with a roll call.
Chairman Morris.
Here.
Mr. Ballou.
Present.
Ms. Cotton.
Here.
Mr. Hesner.
Here.
Mr. Heidner.
Here.
Mr. Mulcrone. Mr. Gorog. We have a quorum.
Okay, we have no public hearings this evening, but we have a development review, case 1215, a petition filed by Michael Rawls, Hamilton Partners, representing the Oaks of Vernon Hills, seeking final site and landscaping plan approvals, final approval of the architectural elevations and signage, and final approval of the plat of subdivision. This is a development proposed for the properties formerly known as Kelly's Day Camp and Lycombe Tap, which are zoned OR&D Office Research and Development. Who's going to speak for the petitioner this evening? Thank you.
Does this replace what we have?
All right. Mr. Chairman, while the petitioners are passing out stuff, I will tell you that since we last saw you, they have made huge strides in refining this plan and working through the various issues or questions that were raised out there. Especially important in this situation is the eastern access, which is the connection to Forest Edge Drive from the eastern portion of the property. They have secured that, and as such, as you saw in your site plan was amended to eliminate the right-in, right-out on Route 45. From the staff standpoint and looking at that, that makes this plan so much better than what you previously saw, and we compliment the petitioners for their efforts in getting that done. You'll notice in the packet that there are 3 recommendations for final approval, and then there are a series of 8 conditions for approval for you all to consider tonight. And then we'll also address the issue with regards to exterior light fixtures as we go forth. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
All right.
Thank you very much. My name is Warren James. I'm a principal of the Kinsey Real Estate Group and also of Riva Development Partners, both entities of which are involved in this project.
Matt Nix with Riva Development Partners.
And
Oh, microphone, okay.
Right.
Microphone.
That's, remember, our main rule.
Let's see. Matt Nix, Riva Development Partners.
Got it. Okay. What would you like to tell us this evening?
well, we're here principally to take your questions or comments. Obviously, we've submitted voluminous information. We're not going to go through the entirety of it. We did want to touch on a few key features. First and foremost was to go through the elevations of the clubhouse, which have been fully developed at this point in time. Also to reaffirm the color scheme. Before, we had a smaller sample panel. On the right-hand side is Scheme D, which shows the brick selection, the siding, and the accent of the shakes, and above it is the trim color, and finally, the selected roof shingle. We do have, I know there's a lot of conjecture on alternate color schemes. We did, for your consideration, prepare a couple of different alternates. The one that we would ask you to consider whether or not it's complementary, not as a substitution, but in addition to, if we want to break up the scheme on the left, which simply has a blue siding color. Otherwise, the other elements are the same. And again, typically we'd go out and we'd construct these again in a larger sample on the site, let everybody give a chance to take a look at it and then decide if Scheme D we're very comfortable with. If we want to intermix, we'd come back. So ask for your feedback on that. Specifically with respect to the elevations of the clubhouse, let me see what we have here. I just handed out 3 pages that show 6 different sides. Because it's U-shaped, we've shown you the interior elevations as well. There we go. So you see the front elevation on top, the north side or the 24-hour entrance on the bottom. And on the right side or south elevation, that shows you the one overhead garage door. You also see the entrance to the pool area from the south side. And then looking at it from the east, you'll see an outdoor fireplace. This is what you'd experience looking across the pool back towards the clubhouse. And then finally, if you're standing inside, it's kind of in the pool, if you will, looking at the south wing and the north wing. So again, we've tried to articulate this, create a lot of visual interest, good fenestration, and obviously the interiors are designed to suit the needs of the residents. So I'm happy to entertain any comments on that. And to go back to, again, to revisit the site, to acknowledge the acquisition of the eastern access, which allows us to do away with the right-in, right-out. It allows us to expand the tree preservation area along Route 45 and to solve or address the traffic concerns on Route 45. The character elevations, again, these are rendered in Scheme D, color scheme. It's tough to see it on the computer, much better to look here at the three-dimensional actual display. But you see, we've tried to introduce a variety of colors and materials to create visual interest. We've articulated the elevations in a way that we think will be architecturally pleasing. And again, with the rear elevation, same intent. We've also submitted to you some cut sheets of the light fixtures that we intend to use on the buildings. As far as the street lights, that would be the village standard. We've supplemented the lighting in the parking areas using some wall-mounted fixtures. We've most recently identified an LED wall-mount fixture that I think has a nice color to it. That's something that we would get a sample, we'd put it up, we'd go out there, evaluate it again, make sure that the color temperature of the LEDs is in keeping with our expectations. But this also is more of a shoebox style, so you should not really see the actual LED illumination. It should create a much more pleasing environment illuminating the parking area surrounding the buildings. We've also identified some fixtures, coach lights to be used on the face of the building. That's more for decorative lighting. In addition, those will be on the perimeter, or on the rear of the row home buildings, adjacent to the garages and adjacent to the sliding glass doors on the rear elevation. So simple coach light, yes, simple coach light, more than likely a CFL, again, to minimize energy usage and take a green approach. Again, here are the character elevations. Each of the
And where would this one be?
we have
Two versions?
We have two versions. We're willing to entertain both. If you have a strong preference for one or the other, we'll get physical samples, make a determination.
I think we added
With-
shutters. and
Yeah,
stuff.
on the front elevation, just to be clear, our intent is to illuminate the front entries with a recessed can with a sealed interior shield, not a sealed lens. Purpose behind that is that bugs don't collect in there. Bugs may be attracted, but they simply drop out. Again, it's typically a sealed CFL type bulb, nice hue, illuminate the entry area.
In the portico.
Yes, underneath the covered area. Same thing in the rear elevation of the apartment buildings. Again, to illuminate that stoop properly, but do so in an environmentally conscious way and one that minimizes maintenance. On the rears of the buildings, we do have shutters shown on the larger windows on the rear elevations. Also, as I noted, would put those coach light fixtures adjacent to the garages, one on each pillar and one adjacent to each sliding glass door. So that should create nice illumination on the back. The exterior lights on the garages and on the stoops would be controlled by photocell. So So those will be on at dusk, off at dawn. Matt, do you want to address signage?
Sure. And this is really the first time you've seen the signage package that we've introduced. You can see on the screen, we've got an overall site plan that identifies the primary and the secondary and the wayfinding signage. We are proposing right at Route 45 in the primary entrance in the median, there will be the primary monument sign that's labeled blue A, and on the next slide you can see it in greater detail. We're also proposing a secondary monument sign, B1, along the frontage along Route 45. The intent being that northbound traffic will see the monument sign and recognize that they're approaching the entrance, and then southbound traffic will also see the primary monument sign. Internally, we've identified a secondary monument sign in front of the clubhouse, and then we also have a package of pedestrian vehicular wayfinding signage throughout the property as shown. And here you can see just the scale of the primary entrance. It's going to be constructed of materials that match the existing building, both the brick on the buildings and the stone that Warren's holding there for the column. There will be plantings in the base of the monument, and then the signage. It will be, actually, the lighting. Can you describe the lighting? Are we backlighting this, I think?
Yeah, our intent is to illuminate the sign from the inside, push the letters through, loose sight. So during the day, you see it as it appears on your screen with, high contrast. At night, basically, there's a glow that comes out around the letters. So the letters appear dark, but the illumination that comes out from the edges of the letters provides great visibility.
So the letters are, in essence, channel letters? Or are they just,
Essentially what this is, it's a box that's internally illuminated with a fluorescent tube. There's a loose sight laser cutout for the letters, and they basically come out, they penetrate the sign box by maybe a half to 3/4 of an inch. So you don't see it during the day, you just see the oaks, see the sign, but at night, that lucite transmits the light through it, it comes out the edges, so you see this glow around the letters. It's a pretty slick, approach. We've done it in several different communities, and it's very tasteful during the day, and it's subtle at night, but it definitely catches your attention.
so how do the little letters appear?
I don't think the little letters will be illuminated at night.
On your signs, I think they're very attractive. My only comment on the main entrance monument is that I know you put looks like the typical brick on the base. Since it's kind of not near that other building, I don't know. My personal feeling was that it'd be nicer if you just continued that same rock pattern across like you did on the other ones. I don't know. It just didn't look quite right to me, but that's just a personal preference.
You mean on the other signs?
No, on this one, instead of having this brick down here, the building brick, just continue this like they did with the other ones and continue that pattern all the way across.
The base of the other sign.
Right.
Okay.
So, just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Sure.
Regarding the illumination, was there any consideration going in LED for these signs?
Haven't looked into that. On that particular sign, we are using LED lights in other parts of the subdivision because of the way this is illuminated. The fluorescent tube inside, you don't see that. It's not like you recognize that as the source or even the type of light. You just see this glow. I am pretty familiar with the LED lights, and I know that heat removal, heat dissipation is key to achieving the longevity. And so the fixtures and the illumination really have to be designed together. I'm not sure, we can evaluate it, see if it lends itself to this, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
think, I think that's really all we had as far as a formal presentation, but we're available to answer any questions from the staff report or anything else.
I just had one more question, actually, if you can go back one slide.
Sure. The
Are
signage?
the secondary monuments also illuminated, or just the main entrance monument?
Just the main entrance sign would be
Good.
illuminated by
Thank
that name, yeah, in that way.
It appears that all the buildings now are, well, other than what you're proposing on the left here, are shades of green, whereas I think in your initial proposal, you had a brown, you called it a C1 color scheme.
There
Has
was,
that
there was
disappeared?
considerable discussion. It was decided that D1 was the color scheme to go with. That's what we've shown on the right-hand side as
Oh.
you're facing it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Now, we put this out there because there was a lot of discussion of alternate palettes. This is the one that we thought was most complementary to D1. We're perfectly comfortable sticking with D1. We just offer it as a potential addition. We're trying to get a little more color, a little more zip than the typical taupe.
And you went away from C1 because,
The brick selection and not looking to do more of the beige, less of the beige on beige.
Okay. Just my preference, I preferred both the green on the right that you are presenting and the beige
Okay.
that you have.
on the plan itself, with the elimination of the right-in, right-out, you've also reconfigured the lower four buildings, the southern four buildings. Was that needed? Was it done for a particular reason, or?
It was done for a particular reason, because our roadway, we are trying to, first of all, we've been able to increase the detention area on the southeast quadrant. We've been able to expand the tree preservation area. Obviously, you don't have a road going through there. And once we pulled off the right-in, right-out entrance and looked at that cul-de-sac, we realized there's a lot of asphalt here for very little purpose. And by reorganizing those buildings, we get the same unit count in a more efficient roadway network that allowed residents to circulate through, and present that nice front door streetscape to Route 45, but minimize the asphalt.
Did you also eliminate parking along, I think it's Bitternut?
Say again, please?
Did you eliminate some of the parking that was required by the other arrangement along Bitternut?
We did reconfigure some of the parking, and what we've gone through an extensive analysis with staff of identifying the number of parking spaces per product type per pod. And the most heavily parked on our initial plan was that southernmost townhome parcel, which was upwards of 6.5, 7 cars per unit, which seemed excessive. So again, we've got at least 4 cars per unit without any of the on-street parking. That's 2 cars behind every unit plus 2 cars in every garage. So then adding to that the on-street parking, that is well into the 4s or 5s, into the 5s. So again, it's just a question of not over parking, providing adequate parking, and then being sensitive to the amount of green space. It's still the highest parked area of the overall community.
I really appreciate the fact that you turned the fronts of the buildings closest to the road, and when you're coming from the west, you're seeing the fronts of those units that are perpendicular to the road, and then you're seeing when you're going to the west, coming from the east, you're seeing the fronts of the houses and the row houses, and that really looks, even though you're a fair distance away from the road, you're still going to see the fronts of buildings.
Thank you for noting that.
Yeah, you're not looking at the parking lot, and it's really very nice.
And the other thing to comment on is we've worked with staff on the tree preservation area and how that's to live and to work. It's not, a no-contact zone. We're inviting people to come in there and enjoy that. Our plan does include the removal of the invasive species, removal of the trees that are dead or dying, and to crown prune and otherwise care for, crown prune, vista prune, those, really remarkable oak trees in that area, and the other trees that comprise that tree preservation area. We want people to enjoy it. We've planned a dog run area within that. That we think is very important, give people a place to exercise their dogs in a natural environment. So we're trying to create something for everybody and at the same time preserve the rural character of Route 45.
To a degree, it puts a little bit of pressure on that commercial property, because everything looks so nice over a majority of that frontage on 45, and then you have the open space that's ready and waiting for something else. And it's going to be interesting what happens there. Somebody's going to have to do a real nice job.
We are, just to note, we are planning on using that for a temporary staging area while we're doing the construction.
It's fine.
So we will be making the site improvements to create, creating the detention at the far west triangle portion, and otherwise grading out that site. The pole barn will remain for now as we use it for construction staging. Obviously, that'll go when a final development plan comes forward.
Can you clarify, where are the wall packs?
Yeah,
envisioned?
I'd be happy to. So we've, if you look at the front elevation of the apartment building, on the far ends is the, excuse me, use the mouse. Let me see if I can get the mouse. There's three. Here we go. Here we go. There, it came to life. Okay, so if you could see right here,
Right?
this is the C unit, which is on the front side of the building. This is a kitchen window, and this is a dining room window. So we're very sensitive to this being the bedroom window, which projects out a couple feet from this plane here behind it. So the wall pack units, I know, again, this is just a rendering of that tree, but the wall pack would be up in this vicinity here, approximately 18 feet above grade. So that illumination, because it's proximate to the kitchen and the dining room, should not impact that. It's also an articulating wall mount of a shoebox type, so we can focus it outward, away from the building, as opposed to a straight downwash or straight, just a glaring outwash. So we'll get the desired illumination, but because of this corner here that projects 2 feet, we won't be illuminating a bedroom window. So we've got one here, and we've got one on the bookend on the other side. When you go to the side elevation, we are planning to put in the provisions for a wall mount here, but we would only install those wall mount units where they're proximate to parking areas, not between buildings. So we're making the provisions. We may come back and say, you know what, we've looked at it, we need some illumination in the pathways, but come back with a much smaller, less intense fixture just to provide some, a lumen or two of illumination. So again, so on the front elevation, we've got here and here. On the side, it would be in this location, if at all. And then on the rear elevation, we're calling for those, again, the same electrical provision. So we'll put the junction box in there. This is a stairwell. This is a stairwell. That stairwell projects out from the main plane of the building. So if we need illumination for park area for safety, whether it be a 250 watt or something less than that, we've got the provisions in there.
Maybe I'm missing.
Here and here.
Maybe I'm missing the point. I understand the sensitivity to the living areas, but I guess what I'm missing is the need for wall packs on a residential structure, which almost seems inherently to be like a commercial or an industrial type of lighting use. Because didn't you indicate that if we look at the front again, Are each of the pillars between the garages also going to have coach lights on them?
Coach lights,
So we're gonna have-
decorative, they're not, there is a village lighting standard.
I understand.
So we have to achieve a certain amount of illumination for the parking areas.
But aren't you also going to have parking standards in the parking lot?
Yes, yes. So we've used a combination of the village standard luminaire and the wall packs. And I think if you look at the cut sheet of the wall pack, you'll see it's a very discrete unit.
Yeah, it's-
LED,
It's this one, right?
yeah, that focuses, you can focus that lens on the area that needs to be illuminated.
I don't know, it just seems to me that I understand what you're doing. I'm just not quite sure with the other kind of site lighting
Of the need?
of the need. That's right. Now, I haven't obviously sat here and done any sort of, lighting study, so I don't know. But
Well, having been in the development game for a while, better to have the light, in this instance, on the building shining out than having the light outside your window shining in.
So are you having to use less parking lot, essential parking lot lighting?
We still have a substantial number of parking lot lights, but when you look at the site plan.
But
there's
is this helping eliminate any of that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because otherwise, we'd be putting standards adjacent to the parking areas that are adjacent to the buildings. And that's, not necessarily what we want to.
Did I just mess up?
It's incorporated in the engineering.
Oh, it's in the engineering?
Not the approach we intended to take.
It's in this area here. There's a street
One.
light here. There would be likely a wall pack here, wall pack, and then the lights in front.
Here's, this is,
There's a street light right there.
I guess, between the buildings. We're looking at, what are we looking at? 12 of 50? The engineering plan?
Is that from the last meeting?
No, it's in this, it's someplace here. It should be in here. It's the last page of the engineering plans. And obviously, that's just an example of one area, I know.
Which plan was it?
We just happen to be looking at the last page, 12 of 50, which I know that's one area.
Yeah. The northwest
Right, the north,
quadrant?
right, yeah.
Yes.
But we can pick any one. I mean, we just happen, John just turned to that one.
So like this one, looks like there's. Yeah. The coach lights around the garage, will they be on a photocell?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll come on and come off, and you guys will just be responsible for changing the bulbs and maintaining the lights.
Correct.
So are there any other lighting elements that can be activated by the resident, or are they all on a timer or photocell?
The one underneath the canopy?
The one under the canopy and the coach lights on the rear adjacent to the garages will be on a photocell or timer,
Okay.
depending upon the product. On the apartments, it'll be a timer. On the townhomes, it'll be a photocell.
Okay.
On at dusk, off at dawn.
Got it.
So we want to maintain a constant standard. The lights in the balconies will be individually controlled.
Got it, okay.
So did you get your answer, Hal?
Are you trying to eliminate the ones on the building?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it just, some of them, when we looked at this one engineering plant, I mean, I can kind of see the use there.
You mean in between the
basically-
buildings?
Between the buildings, I can see that, but, I mean, some of the other ones,
Because they're in the open space?
Right.
Kind of out in the open?
pretty much, right. Okay, well, while we ponder that, I have another question. The connection, which runs to the east, which, to Forest Edge Drive. Okay, I know last time we were here, you had indicated that you had purchased that property that it runs over.
We have it under contract.
Under contract,
Yeah.
fair enough. Bitternut Drive, though, is not, or am I just misreading it? That's still a private road, it's not a public
That
road.
is a
that
private
right?
road, correct. All of the roads
All the roads are
are
okay,
private.
fair enough. My real question is, and maybe I just didn't look at it long because the print is very small and I'm getting old. What it prohibits here from that lot being sold off separately and develop, and essentially this private road getting taken away? Because I think the easement that I saw was a utility easement for the village, not a perpetual easement over this property, which wouldn't
That-
anyways, because you've got unified
That
ownership.
road is being acquired by the same entity that is acquiring the 29 acres. It will become part and parcel of the same ownership. So ownership of that lot 215 within the Corporate Woods
Right.
subdivision will be owned by the same apartment ownership
Sure,
entity.
and that's why you can't, an easement doesn't work, I understand that. But I guess my real question is, what prohibits, or what is gonna stop here from one day at this tree line, putting up a do not cross sign and selling that lot off? In other words, what's gonna keep this road always in place?
The subdivision approval, the PD approval, which is, I don't think you can modify a PD without the consent of the village.
Are you
So-
thinking, Hal, that it needs to be a covenant to the property?
Well, either that or, I don't know, and I should ask John, does our PUD approval cover that sufficiently? Because most of our drawings kind of end.
No, remember, it's not part of the PUD.
So how do we ensure that always is gonna be there?
Well, we're working on with regards to the REA right now, and the covenants and restrictions are going to cross over and take that driveway and that parcel, actually incorporate that as a part of the covenants and restrictions. Again, you're going to deed this property to the overall project, and I guess we'd have to figure out a way to make sure that it would not be subject to further sale.
See, clearly the village's easement over that property, that's gonna go into the future, into perpetuity. But, because that road services this property, if it's gonna be under unified ownership, which it will at some point in the not too distant future, an easement doesn't help there, because that's gonna just leave as a matter of law when you have unified ownership. I just wanna make sure that this doesn't go away.
I think we can adequately address that in the reciprocal easement agreement, which also has other covenants in it that
Okay.
ensure the proper long-term operation of the community.
And then that's gonna be similar to the access easement on the northwest corner, I suppose?
The access easement on the northwest corner, we are matching up to a previously designated emergency access point.
Oh,
I've seen the
okay.
language of
Okay.
the ZF Industries Phase 2 approval. It dictated that there should be an emergency gate at that location, which there is. And we have agreed with the owners of the park, the owner of that parcel, that we will make that connection a functional, though gated,
Right.
locked, gated access point, accessible only for emergency vehicles. And the expectation is that that would run both ways. If
Right.
ZF Industries needs emergency access, they can come through our subdivision. If we need emergency access, we
We
come
can go
through
through.
theirs. That's the point of it, but
So-
only emergency.
So how does that gate work?
Fire department would.
Knox
either
box?
Knox box or some bolt cutters.
Okay, so if ZF Industries needs to get through there, they just cut the chain.
If ZF Industries needs to get through there, that's not the expectation. The expectation, that is emergency vehicles only. It is not for our people to go onto their site or for their people to go on our site. In fact, we've agreed with the owner of the corporate park to erect a 6-foot chain link fence along the property line to prevent, our residents or others.
So it's just a
going
Knox
back and-
box access?
Just a Knox box, yeah, it's
Okay.
emergency only.
What you just said, can you say that a little more? A 6-foot chain link fence, where?
Along the perimeter of the property. That's part of the plan.
The entire perimeter you're
Yep.
talking about?
Along not the entire, along the
north?
perimeter as it abuts the park.
So it would be the
Black-
north and the east?
Black vinyl coated,
So-
very discreet.
So does it follow Tetra Pak up, ZF across the north, and then
Yep.
southwards
Yep,
to,
that was part of the conditions of the,
so it basically goes,
that.
it's the entire property.
Everything but the Route 45?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So it stops at the road?
Yeah.
Or does it stop at the corner?
Yeah, typically.
It stops at the common property line.
Does it turn and come south?
Yes,
And does
along
it,
Tetra Pak.
yep, does it come all the way
It comes
down
west.
to the access road into Corporate Woods?
Yes. We will have a temporary construction gate at that point to prevent ingress, egress, except during, when we permit it.
And does
That
it-
gate will then go away.
And does it extend south of the access road?
Yes, it does.
To which point?
All the way out to the border.
Okay, to the road.
Yep.
Yeah, we can figure it
Okay. What else would you like to say this evening?
Happy to entertain any further questions.
Any questions?
out. Okay. On the landscape plans, some of the, let me find an example here. Page L1700. On the, I don't know which direction I'm looking at, so on the east, or the west side of the building, are those driveways on the west side?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now you've got some landscape in between those driveways. How large is that area there? Is that
That's
large enough?
approximately 4 feet.
Is that large enough, given the snow and the salt we get in the winter, that plant life will survive in there?
I think it's important to have that green strip there, and I recognize that that can be a challenge to maintain that. Obviously, we will do our darndest, and if need be, it's typical that if there's snowplow damage, we're coming back with sod in the spring to fix it. But I think it's very important to break up that
So there's
asphalt there.
some plants at the.
Yep, there's plants.
Towards the base of the building, and then it's grass further out.
Correct.
Did the landscape review say anything about that?
Well, they've reviewed it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Warren, but in all likelihood with a snowplow, you're going to run up to the door and
Drag it
pull the
back.
snow back.
Well, absolutely, we'll drag it back.
Right.
If it's not, snow blowers there. Also, we did consider your concern out along the roadway, where it's just that much more difficult. We can control what chemicals get used on the driveways and frankly, the internal roads, but we did omit any green space once we get towards the sidewalk and out, and that in certain instances between the sidewalk and the back of curb. That's where we defaulted to the concrete.
Well, and I think, Jim, I think it's safe to say too that in these instances, there's going to be damage from a plow or somebody driving off or sliding off or whatever it is, and they'll just have to repair it as a part of ongoing maintenance in the springtime, like what we all do when we damage our driveways or our sidewalks.
If we approve it as plant material in there, are they later required to always replace it with plant material? Can they?
Yeah,
say-
it
Can
is an
they come
approved
to a
plan.
point they say, this is ridiculous doing this all the time?
Well, they could come back to us and say, we'd like to amend the plan because here's what we found, but this is the approved plan, this is what
So
it'll
they'd
have to
have to
be
come back.
going forward. Yeah.
mean, like, if they
Aesthetically, these
wanted-
are our front doors, and to us, it's very important to keep that green space there.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Despite the fact that I know this is not a public hearing, I believe there's some people who want to make some comments regarding this.
Okay.
John, you want to make a comment or raise a question? You're the people.
Yeah.
Hi. My name is John Stetzel. I represent ZF Industries. And the detail that you're going through is amazing. It's impressive the way you're looking at this. We're late to the party for whatever reason, and we're sorry. But as John knows, ZF Industries has spent a tremendous amount of money creating a major manufacturing facility in that space. It will be, the intent of spending that money was to increase the employment for ZF, and in addition to that, increase the the hours of operation. They intend to have 3 shifts running in that building. And the entire truck court is not very far from these residential buildings. And we're nervous that it's going to create a problem with people complaining about the fact that we're running trucks in and out of there day and night, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we want to register that concern.
If we can, I'm not sure how we find it, maybe the aerial, can you show us what you're looking at? We're talking about? How we get to the aerial?
Okay, you guys, can you come back and,
At least one of
now
you.
you're the peoples.
Right.
Just go to the aerial.
I'm assuming that'd be the best one to look at. Okay. All right.
So there's some ZF Industries right
Okay, so where are we talking about this truck court?
ZF Industries is located here, Phase 1, and that's Phase 2.
It's easier if you look at this drawing.
Okay, why don't we pull that one up then? That one we can pull up too.
The sign plan.
This one.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just does it,
Oh, I
we
see.
really don't capture the buildings. They're shaded out, but they're basically up here to the north.
And the curve to the...
You need to talk, we
Talk on the mic.
one rule.
Excuse
you have
me.
to talk to
I'm
the microphone. No, no, not you.
All right, you want to take the handhold?
Not you, Warren, John. That's our rule.
I'm sorry. The curb, the truck docks, and there are more than a dozen in the back, are exterior for the most part, and there's about 120 feet of paved area that's used for maneuvering of those trucks. And bear in mind that the addition that was put on over the last 3 or 4 years doubled the space and it's 40-foot clear. The intent was to allow distribution of the parts that ZF manufactures or remanufactures. And in addition, they've put a major test bench that they use to rebuild the wind turbine, those giant things that you see. And that equipment is as big as a Greyhound bus that they bring in and run for 3 or 4 days at a time at full speed in the building, and those are coming. There are 48,000 of those in America right now that are going to be eventually run through that building. I may have the numbers not exactly right, but fairly close.
Close enough.
And that means that they're going to be coming in day and night to be worked on in that facility. And it's not far from, if you look at the plantings that are there, it's just extremely close, and we're worried that we're going to get people knocking on the door saying, "Be quiet and turn your truck off," and we just can't have it. As simple as that.
30, 40.
The area?
No. Sorry.
It didn't take long.
No, both. The only truck entrance, how do you do it? Poke it?
No, just move it, just move it.
Where am I? Right there. Here is the truck entrance along the west side of the building, the only access for the trucks. The only access back to the truck court that's here is right along this building. Oh, and you think it comes along the south side of your building? Yeah. Yeah.
We're very cognizant of that. We were absolutely aware of that during the planning and understood the use and the nature of it and the fact that they're loading docks back here. In fact, that's in part what drove the land plan when you go back to the site plan.
Were you aware that was going to be 24 hours?
I would think you would want to get those two.
I'm not sure those were as 24 hours, but we're certainly aware that there were truck traffic and aware of the type of activity and use. So, yes, there is the drive aisle that comes down here. This is where that emergency access point is. Then their drive aisle goes past what I believe is, you described as parts storage?
Correct.
Yeah, in the Phase 2 building, and then the loading docks are actually set back in the original building along here to the north. That's part of the reason why we took the orientation of these townhomes as we did, where the master bedrooms face south, the secondary bedrooms face north, and the garages face north with the kitchens and kitchen and breakfast area facing north. So we've obviously tried to minimize that. We've also employed that similar approach addressing, the Jewel Osco and their loading docks or train tracks in numerous instances where we can get the active and the primary sleeping quarters away from that. Now you look at the distance that we have from this building. We've turned the corner and end to it, which is at least 200 feet, probably more. And then the one building that is proximate to the north property line, those are the garages at the first floor. Second floor and third floor, there are 12 units, and there are 2 units on the first floor. Those are orienting, more to the northeast, towards the undeveloped Darling property. So again, we were cognizant of that. We designed it to minimize the number of units that would have a direct impact day-to-day or night-to-night living.
But the fact is that the green buffer between the units is marginal, minimum. And it's all the green area between the curb and our curb and our property line is all renegade trees. It's not, it's not planted with anything that was intended to be a buffer, because the zoning next to it was what we thought always was office research development, something that would be compatible with our use as opposed to the residential. But it really isn't compatible with our use.
Okay.
Okay, the loaded question. The loaded question is, how do you address it with potential renters? Do you address it with potential renters? Do you talk to them about it? Do you inform them of the condition?
Yes, absolutely. Common practice and something that we've employed time and again for sale product. You recognize that, these are the adjacent uses, and you acknowledge that. This is a rental community. If people find it objectionable, typically one-year leases, they don't re-up. That's our issue more than it's their issue. I do want to also point out that we did provide notice to the property owner. I recognize there are different stakeholders here. Yep. This is a tenant making an objection. The landowner of the ZF Industries property did comment on the plans, did receive notice, and in fact, we've added that fence and we've added additional conifers to the original landscape plan to address their concerns, to provide more visual buffer. And, my experience has been the best buffer is, for sound, is distance. So we've tried to move that away.
No one is suggesting that you didn't give proper notice, because we know that it's owned by a different person than ZF Industries. That's not an issue. And I think what Commissioner Hessner is really suggesting is that there's really 2 ways to address this. And I don't think it's really an objection to the use. It's more of an awareness.
Yep.
One way is to somehow totally insulate your development from sound. Now that's, other than a dome, that's probably pretty much not possible. The other way is through some sort of, which we've done in other areas of the village, essentially notice to people. And it seems that the ones that are potentially afflicted, if that's the right word, are, I guess it's buildings 13 through 17 in the northwest corner, and potentially 5 and 6, the 2 in Hickory Commons at the furthest north. I mean, we could start drawing lines further, but then I think we get very attenuated. It sounds like, from what you're saying, is that you are willing to make sure that people kind of know about this, that no one gets.
It's to our,
Right.
to our interest as well.
Right.
I think we're on the same, we really have mutual interests here, that we want to give proper notice, let people know exactly
Right.
who their neighbors are, and let them decide.
Right, and it seems to me that in terms of the buffering, that falls in two categories. Again, it falls in the aesthetic buffering, so things look nice between neighbors, and also the buffering for the sound and the sight lines. I guess my question would be a little bit different now. It's not only just sound, it's because you say you operate 24/7. I have to apologize. I've never driven behind your building at night, which is probably a good thing. Is there going to be, are there issues with, the lights that are going to, are we going to be able to block the lights from trucks that are going to be moving back there, et cetera? Are we going to have things shining into first floor units? I mean, is that where we need to look at more buffering now? Or is it sufficient what's out there?
You're asking me?
I guess I'm asking both of you. One, I don't know what really
Well,
happens, and two, I'm asking.
your answer is no. There's,
No.
Please don't make us not
Oh,
like that area.
No. I'm not suggesting you to do that. But I want to know is, are your operations such that it's something we need to look at here?
Yes.
Okay.
Understand that the product comes in at different times.
Sure.
And it's not a, I'm sorry. I don't look like Frank Sinatra, and I'll never be able to sing like him. But the product comes in
Sure.
at all times, and it's not a consistent product. It's a sometimes it's as big as a Greyhound bus, and sometimes it's smaller, and it takes time and effort and maneuverability to get it into the actual building. So the whole idea was to put that truck court back
Understand.
in the back.
Okay, let's ask you two questions, then we'll ask the two gentlemen flanking you how it affects. First off, you do get deliveries in the evenings,
Yes.
which I assume these trucks have lights in them, so there's going to be headlights that are going to sweep across things. That's
Yes.
number one. Number two, what is your site lighting back there? I'm assuming that it meets whatever the village standards are, that your light doesn't really leave your site, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. So for purposes of this development, is there sufficient buffering from the sweep of headlights from that, what we've now called a truck court, to your area? That's up to you two guys.
No, I think that the ordinance.
You, right, remember the rule? You have to speak at a microphone?
I would answer it this way.
Sure.
It is incumbent upon us to ensure that there is, for if there isn't, and it does become an issue, it will affect our ability to lease those units.
I appreciate that,
So,
but because
yeah,
you're asking
yes,
for an approval, what
And
are we
we've-
approving?
And let me reiterate the point. We submitted an initial landscape plan, and we supplemented that with additional conifers along the north
understand.
property line to create that visual buffer, that screen.
So are you satisfied at this point that you have a sufficient buffer
Yes,
for this purpose now?
for this purpose.
Okay,
yes.
now whether it's visually attractive from the second floor, that's a whole nother world we can get into, I know. But for this purpose, for lights, you think you're okay?
I'm confident that we've properly addressed it. I also know that if it becomes an impediment, it's in our best interest
Sure.
to go beyond, to take the next step.
Okay, and you're going to have, now this chain link fence you're going to have back there, it's going to have the, whatever the slat stuff is called? So it's,
We've not
Well, flat.
entertained that, but that's certainly a reasonable suggestion.
okay, because I guess that's the other question, to keep it out. Save me the time of looking through these plans. Is that back, which would be your north property line, is there any sort of, elevation change, or is there a berm there or anything?
There's a little bit of elevation change there now. It varies.
Are you going to
from
change it? Are
along
you
the-
going to make it bigger, smaller?
No,
Okay, fair enough.
no, there's existing trees that we're trying to preserve.
I understand.
That's the objective,
Okay.
and supplement that.
All right. Are there any other operational issues from ZF Industries? And quite candidly, you're not coming asking for something, we're asking you about your neighbors that you believe may affect your neighbor that we should know about at this point?
I can't, I wouldn't know any at this point in time.
Okay, fair enough. All right, okay. Anybody else?
I think what the gentleman from ZF is trying to accomplish is he wants to make sure that he doesn't get affected by this development. And I think he's looking for some, I don't know, assurance that, this whole group of people doesn't come charging in and say, well, we want them to, to stop trucking at night, and that
Right.
Well, you're going to say, no, that was here from the beginning, and you have to live with this. So I think that's all he's really asking for, and I think they should have that, so. So as long as they're aware of it, and they understand that, he's always going to be there, and the village understands that he's always going to be there, then they're going to be fine.
Anybody else?
I just want to thank you for coming forward and enlightening us in your operation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add at this point?
Thanks.
Anybody from the commission?
Well, I would just like to point out that they can present a notice to tenants. Tenants can read it and sign off on it. And just like we saw out here on Centennial Crossing, we had signs there for umpteen years saying there was a roadway going through there. Yet when there was a roadway going through there, it was all hell. And I could see
So how
people
do you
saying,
stop that?
I could see people saying, I'm stuck on a lease for a whole year. You got to do something about this noise.
And how do you resolve that?
You don't put a residential area next to a 24-hour industrial outfit that's got trucks going in and out.
Any other comments?
I think it all comes down to the old buyer beware. So I think if they do their due diligence and they let people know that they're gonna, this is what could happen, then I think people make those decisions on their own, and they can scream and shout, but I think if they do everything they should do up front and give everyone proper notification, let them know, then I think you have to live with that. I mean, if you're gonna rent there and you think it's a concern, you drive out there one night and sit there and listen to it. I mean, I know I would.
And until there's multiple owners out there, there's one single owner or a conglomerate that is one owner, they go to that owner.
And these are tenants, leases, and there will be price differentiation predicated on location, as there always is in real estate.
And would you rent a luxury, what do we call ourselves here? A luxury apartment next to a business that does high-volume trucking?
I don't think it matters whether I would or anybody else on this commission would. It matters whether somebody would.
And the risk is theirs,
Right.
not ours. It's theirs. I mean, they must have known this was going to be back there, and to come in here blindly and think that they were going to build something and not have know that something was going on back there, I just can't believe that. So I think you're probably right. There's going to be some people that they're going to rent there, and they're going to go, well, maybe this is more than I thought it was going to be, and they're going to have to take that up with them, and they'll work that out somehow. I don't think that's our issue anymore, though.
I'm probably, because I'm sitting between the right and the left, I'm in between. And let me tell you why I'm in between. I agree that it's an issue, because I agree that what I've learned, if I've learned anything in my years on the commission, is that once your home, your apartment building, your store, your factory, whatever is built, you become anti-development, because everything else is bad after that point. So I've learned that. The other thing which I've learned is that, yes, it is incumbent upon the developer to take responsibility for these things, and this is the only place I fall off that truck, is that it has to be with a sufficient and a knowing decision by the person that's purchasing. And with what it sounds like, the commitment that you're willing to make this known to people, and I suppose we would put in our approval that it's something that the village would get to at least look at, but we're not going to approve because we don't want to take the liability on it. That makes me feel a little bit better, because then people can decide, not to tell stories, but the old story was no one would ever live on a busy street, but that's what people do in Chicago every day. So they move to the suburbs and still live on busy streets. So there's different places for different people. As long as you believe in a knowing way with what ZF Industries does next to you, that you have done whatever is necessary to make your development a success by mitigating the effects and making it known. If our approval includes that, or the board's approval includes that, I would say I'm okay with it. But that means it has to be knowing and sufficient, and I think we have to leave not to chance, but actually in our specific conditions of approval, that these things are addressed versus left for some later date. And then it's, as I think we've heard, it's people decide how they want to decide. And not everyone wants to live in our, my house, and that's fine.
Understood.
Okay. So with that, if you have nothing else, you have 3 requests today. As you probably have learned in the past, we have a standing motion to recommend approval. The first would be a motion to recommend final approval of the site and landscaping plans. It's pursuant to the conditions that are in the staff report, and John, who has been very nicely taking down the additional ones, will let him tell you the additions.
The ninth condition would be inclusion in the rental document of a letter of notice which describes ZF Industries, its use and hours of operation, including truck deliveries. This letter of notice would apply to buildings 13 through 17 and 5 and 6, and that a copy of the letter would be provided to the village. We'll say prior to final CO being issued for these buildings, the certificate of occupancy.
Can we add to that, that the operation is 24-hour?
Yeah. Yeah, hours of operation, yeah. The 10th condition would be the use of masonry for all, masonry stone, I'm sorry, for all monument bases. And that would be the,
Can we just clarify that on the primary entry monument sign, that we would use the designated stone, which is the Chilton weathered edge with red, and eliminate the brick as shown on the submittal?
and that would be for entrance monument A and then the secondary monuments?
I think it's already on.
It's already on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Already on
Yeah.
that one.
Got it. The 11th, for the eastern access, create language to maintain long-term access to the PUD property in perpetuity. And that's what I have. So you have items 1 through 9, or 1 through 8 in the packet, and then 9, 10, and 11, which has been added to the packet.
Okay.
Do we need to address the colors or not?
You can.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, Scheme D is the one that was previously recommended for approval and has been approved as a part of the initial ordinance.
Are we doing this as separate?
Yeah,
3
you wanna do the-
separate?
wanna do
Wouldn't
that
that
for-
be number 2?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that would be number
So-
2. All right, we'll do that in a second.
Okay, so right now we have a motion to recommend final approval of site and landscape plans with the 8 staff conditions provided to us previously, and then conditions 9, 10, and 11 as articulated this evening by Mr. Kalmar. We need a second for that.
A second.
Okay, any discussion on that particular motion?
The only thing I'm going to say is that because of the comment I've made earlier about residents being that near to 24 hours, I'll be voting negative.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, need a roll call?
Mr. Baloo,
Yes.
Ms. Cotton,
Yes.
Mr. Hesner,
Yes.
Mr. Heidner,
No.
Mr. Mulcrone, Mr. Gorog, Chairman Morris.
Yes. Okay, next we have a motion to recommend final approval of the architectural elevations and signage plans, subject to the same 8 conditions in the staff report and the additional 3 this evening. But before we second, we want to talk about colors.
I know right now, I think the whole project is the green. And they brought in as an alternative the blue. I have no objection to the blue if they want to sprinkle that in amongst every 3rd building or something. I don't know how you guys want to do it, but to me, it's not unappealing, so.
I would make the suggestion that if all the main buildings are green, then they should all be green. And if they use the blue, then it would be on the row houses. That's just a suggestion. But I don't think either one of them work very nicely. They should just be consistent.
Okay, anybody else? Color?
Just my preference, once again, was to go back to the original C1, which is a tan configuration with the greens.
That was a while ago.
It's on your first presentation.
Okay. Anybody else?
I guess that means you can have all colors now.
I have no objection to what is proposed.
The other,
So you're okay with the blue? You're okay with the blue?
I'm fine with the blue.
You're okay with the blue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Jim, you're,
just wanted the tan again.
okay. But what do you think about the blue?
I'm not a blue-green person. I don't like those combinations.
Okay.
But that's just my taste.
Okay.
I wouldn't
Okay.
not approve it because of that. But I do have an
Well,
additional.
I'm sorry, can I clarify before you go? So Commissioner Hasner has proposed that the blue be applied to the row homes, and the green stay with the big ones. Do you guys have a preference?
Our preference would be come back to you with a specific schedule.
Okay.
You know, I'd like to do it in larger scale. Again, I'd take the incremental approach, keep blowing it up, make sure we're comfortable with it.
Sounds great.
Yep, works for
Thank
me.
you.
Can I
Sounds great.
The shutters, are they the bar color that's across the top there? Is that what color the
That's
shutters
trim
will be?
color. Yeah, the trim colors, it ran out of the siding on the left. The trim color is better represented on the one on the right, Scheme D.
And just for grains, on the picture that you showed us, the shutters look awfully thin.
I noted that too.
Okay.
I think we can widen them up.
Okay, just an observation.
Yeah, that was
It
the,
looked like
that was
a
the architecture.
fat
and
trim.
it looks a little, yeah, it's a little skimpy.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay. All right, so we need a second for that motion?
Wait, I wasn't done.
Okay. Oh, you weren't done?
The
I'm sorry.
other comment I had, I don't think there's really a need for a B1 sign at all. I think none of the other developments, housing developments, have a separate sign like that. The main monument sign should be sufficient.
Where is it?
Part of the rationale, if I could address that, part of the rationale is the tree preservation area, because there's a lot of trees that block that entrance. We have the deceleration lane, yes, but until you're upon it, because of the efforts to save those trees, you won't see it. So we just want to give people, make the awareness, it's a 50-mile-an-hour zone in, speed limit through that. We figured better to have some identification sign ahead of time, and then at least there's an indication that you're
And you
approaching the
you
entry.
stated it wasn't illuminated, correct?
That entry, that sign down there,
B1.
that wasn't our intent, no.
It's not
No,
illuminated, so
just
now you're not going to
just
see it
the main
anyway.
one. That's right.
Yeah.
But you've got streetlights
Right.
that are illuminating the entrance at
Sure.
night.
Okay.
Yeah, it's adjacent to the path too, so.
Okay, let's
Okay.
make this easy. The motion we have right now is motion to recommend final approval of the architectural elevations and signage. Let's split it apart. Motion to recommend final approval of the architectural elevations, subject to the comments we've had regarding color, and do the signs separate. Okay?
Okay, fine.
So we need a second. Justin, did you already second? Oh, there's no second.
I thought somebody did.
No,
You stopped it.
Stopped it.
I stopped
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion to recommend a final approval of the architectural elevations, subject to the 8 staff conditions and the 3 additional conditions this evening, plus the color.
The blue scheme
Right.
is okay with the developer coming back and providing a color scheme for all the buildings,
Right.
or a schedule, I'm sorry.
Schedule.
So we need a second for that motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on just that one? Okay, hearing none, we need a roll call.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yes.
Mr. Heidner?
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrum? Mr. Gorog? Chairman Morris?
Yes. Okay, then we have a motion to recommend final approval of the signage plan, subject to the conditions that we've already discussed this evening. Okay, and before we second, you have comments you want to put on this one?
Just a comment I had before, I just don't see the need for the B1.
Fair enough.
And conversely, I really have no problem with that sign for B1.
Okay, anybody else?
My opinion. Your opinion.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we need a roll call.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yes.
Mr. Heidner?
No.
Mr. Mulcrum? Mr. Gorog? Chairman Morris?
Yes. Okay. Now we have a motion to recommend final approval of the plat of subdivision for the Oaks of Vernon Hills, and that's subject to the conditions we've already discussed this evening. We need a second for that.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the plat of subdivision? Okay, we need a roll call.
Ms. Cotton,
Yes.
Mr. Hesner,
Yes.
Mr. Heidner,
No.
Mr. Baloo,
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrum, Mr. Gorog, Chairman Morse.
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
anything else we can do for you this evening? Okay, thank you very much.
Leave those.
Leave them?
Yeah.
Okay,
This matter will be on the agenda for the 21st, which is next Tuesday, for further consideration. Just also as a matter of information, we are working with them on the REAs, the declarations and covenants, and have swapped reviews on that. So we'll be moving right along with that. And we have to complete those before final approval has been given by the village board. So,
okay.
thank you.
Okay. Future projects? I guess we'll do that.
Yeah, back to the future, as they say. In your packet is 4 items that are pending right now, and the first one you'll see on June 12th is the AAA Car Care Plus Center special use permit, which will be in the vacant lot that's located between, everybody knows where Panda Express is and the Starbucks building, and the pond to the north. So it's a 1-acre parcel, and they're proposing to place this on that lot.
Did they do a concept review months and
Yes.
months ago?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yep. So, well, and AAA has been a little finicky on their design, and the building has expanded and contracted based on some things that they've been working on corporately. So that's why it's taken so long to get back to you. So McDonald's is looking to do a restaurant remodel and expanded of the drive-through. They're going to remodel the entire store, both inside and out. And it's
about time.
It's about time, yeah. So, Adalgo is a pet hotel, 500 North Fairway. It's where Pump It Up and used to be. They're planning to, or their intention is to purchase the entire building and to place the pet care facility in there, both daycare and also kenneling, overnight accommodations. So,
Would there be external kennels?
no, it'll be fully inside. The building's about 18,000 square feet. So, and it's a large warehouse area that was used not only for the Pump It Up area, but it was also used for a contractor's warehouse type setup. So it sets up pretty well for open space, both internally and externally to the building. So, and then right now there's discussion about a possible memory care facility at Woodbine in Milwaukee. This is the old County Mayo site, and they're looking at doing a concept presentation sometime. I think we're going to take them to June because we're running out of agenda spaces for the May meeting. And
So the Irishman got older.
the Irishman got, yeah, and it just went away totally. So it's kind of a mess, quite frankly. So, so that one may be coming. We've got a couple of other things that are potentially. Rust-Oleum's looking to do some more things with their property.
Not another parking lot.
Yeah. The 2 restaurant properties across the street are in play now, again, so you may see something come to you. I'm not sure what yet, but that may very well be coming also. No. And then Westfield is moving rapidly towards construction beginning. We're working on the economic incentive agreement right now, and we hope to have an agreement in place by next Tuesday so the board can take an action on that. So, so a lot of good things going on. A lot of activity, a lot of activity. So, the surgical center is getting ready to go under construction. They've got their fencing up and they've moved machinery onto the site. That's off a center, the Hawthorne Surgical Center that you guys looked at a number of months ago. So, that's coming. I don't know yet when Chick-fil-A is going to get underway, but they're beginning the transition now, and eventually Pier 1 will be demolished. Pier 1 is actually moving into River Tree, into one of the former either Office Depot, Old Country Buffet spaces. Those spaces are going to be combined. Ross Dress for Less is going in for one, and Pier 1's going into the other space.
So they're going to close and then reopen?
Correct. That's the plan right now.
Not just move.
Yeah, so they're gonna re-demise the walls in there and cut the space up a little bit differently, so it's split a little bit better between the two. So it's good news for them. Office Depot's actually moved in the space now. Alta is moving across into Hawthorne Hills Square next to Dick's, and there's some discussions about a possible shoe store going into their space. So they reduced in size and they went into the remaining part of the old Michaels space right next to Best Buy. So a lot smaller. Yeah, they don't sell nearly the paper that they used to.
But they were merging with Office Max.
Office Max, right.
Did that go through?
Yes, I believe it did.
So they'll probably be close.
Well, there'll be some repositioning there, but there's some other opportunities that may become available there in Town Line Commons. So, so things are busy. You guys are going to be busy over the next 12 months or so. So, okay.
Okay, there's no minutes, so we have a motion to adjourn. We need a second. Everybody in favor of that one? Anybody opposed? We're adjourned. Good night.
Thank you.